Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. This is a UFC 257 preview sponsored by Parimatch. Parimatch are an MMA focused bookmaker that are also heavily involved in football and are the official betting partners of Everton, Leicester and Juventus. I'm your host, George Elek, and today I'm joined by two expert panel guests to give you their thoughts and insight ahead of the return of Conor McGregor as he faces off against Dustin Poirier on Saturday night or Sunday morning, if like us, you'll be watching it, or like me, I should say, you'll be watching it in the UK. First up, we've got Peter Carroll from MMA On Point. Hi, Pete. How are you doing? How excited are you about the weekend?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think a lot of people, they're wondering if Conor is still elite. And although he got back to action in January last year with that win against Donald Cerrone, it really gave us no indication as to if he's still among the big boys at 155. Donald Poirier is the best guy in the world outside of, I'd say, Khabib and Conor. So I think it's a perfect fight to introduce him to the title conversation if he does have his hand raised on Saturday night. So I'm very, very excited to see if he still has got it.
I think we all are, and we're going to get into the fight shortly, but we're also joined by MMA and boxing journalist Chisanga Malata. Chisanga, how are you doing? And you're, I think, joining us from Abu Dhabi, am I right?
That is correct. I'm, although it's not a luxurious location right now, I'm just in my hotel room doing stories. I'm not by the beach or whatever, because unfortunately for this third installment of Fight Island, we're only restricted to going between our hotel, the Fighter Hotel, and the arena. I think that's just to combat, obviously, the pandemic that we're still in. A lot of people thought it was going to disappear when it turned 2021, but it's still here. But yeah, I'm live from Abu Dhabi. I'm actually going to be heading to the arena for the midweek card in just a couple of hours. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And more importantly, I'm looking forward to Saturday night. There's still a lot of questions, unanswered questions, that will be answered come the end of Saturday. Well, it'll be Saturday morning for me, actually. I'll be around, I think, 10 o'clock at Conor fights. So, but yeah, wow. I'm really looking forward to it.
What's the atmosphere like there? I mean, it must be obviously very different given the pandemic and given the restrictions and things, but are you still, is the kind of anticipation still pretty palpable?
I'd say, like, for the last few days, it's not been as big as in other McGregor fight weeks, but I can tell that everybody, even the media members, are starting to get a bit more excited, especially as Conor arrived to the hotel. Was it yesterday or the day before? I think it was 2 days ago. But yeah, seeing him arrive, and it's just made everything a bit more realistic and realistic, a bit more real, and brought it to the fore. And everybody's buzzing for it, to be honest, myself included.
Pete, what would you do to be there?
I'm actually all right. I don't like all this bubble nonsense. So I'm not. Everyone's like, "Oh, I wish you were here, Pete." And I was like, "I'm grand in Dublin. It's fine. Don't worry about me."
Well, you say that, but
I was going to say to you, a lot of people are telling me that McGregor could get booed on Saturday night based on the people in the hotel that they're speaking to. The fact that it would be a Khabib stronghold usually. The fact that Dustin Poirier came across so well when he fought Khabib there not so long ago, and they exchanged T-shirts in the middle of the octagon afterwards. Could that be a possibility? Like, we've never seen that. We've never seen Conor McGregor booed at a UFC event.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's fought in this region before. I think he fought in Oman, Jordan back in the day. But I mean, a lot has changed then, and a lot of things have been said. And in particular, his behavior at the 2-9 press conference. I mean, we don't need to go back over that. But some of the things that he did say he hasn't endeared himself to people over this side of the world. So there is that possibility. I wouldn't be surprised if people boo, or I was about to say even try throw things at him, but there's barriers, there's plexiglass between the fans and the media, so that won't be able to happen. But yeah, there's a slight possibility that could happen, which would be insane. I mean, considering from his second fight onwards, he's just been getting the loudest cheers out of any fighter. But it will be weird if people do boo him, because ever since his second fight, the Max Holloway fight, I'm not sure if you were there, Pete, it was many, many moons ago. yeah, he's been cheered by everybody. So it would be weird, but I wouldn't discount the possibility of that actually happening.
Well, we'll see when it comes to the fight on Saturday. We're going to get into the preview now, and just a quick look at the odds before we get into it. Conor McGregor is the 4-11 heavy odds on. Dustin Poirier is 27-10. I said to you guys off air before, I am no MMA expert at all, but I watched the fight between Poirier and McGregor at the time. I watched it again yesterday, back in 2014, when both fighters were featherweights on the rise, and McGregor was really announcing himself to the world, and he got that knockout in just under 2 minutes. It couldn't really have been more convincing. Pete, what's the reason? I mean, why can we expect anything different this time around? What's happened in the last 6 years with these two fighters to expect this to be a different fight?
Dustin Poirier was getting dropped a lot at 145 against guys who really had no business dropping him. Akira Korosani was one of the guys. And look, Akira was a very strong, durable guy, tough fighter, but he's not in Dustin's world in terms of how elite he is. And guys like this were getting dropped. Like Poirier was getting dropped by guys like this. And as soon as he went up to 155, he became a completely new fighter. He's so durable. He actually really seems to relish firefights. He sits in the pocket, exchanges all the time. But I mean, for those reasons, that's why Conor is the favorite, I believe. Nobody hits like Conor does. And if you're going to go into a contest with him and stand in the pocket and just exchange punches, it's going to be bad news. He's proved he still has the stopping power in the fight against Donald Cerrone. And he proved that how dynamic he is. Like, he was hitting him with shoulders, he was kicking him, using all types of different tools of his arsenal to get rid of Donald Cerrone. So for me, you know, Conor's a lot bigger, Dustin's a lot bigger. Dustin can certainly withstand a lot more. But from what I'm hearing, with the addition of Phil Sutcliffe, a legendary boxing mind in Ireland, into Conor's camp, he's sharper, he's hitting harder. And I really just don't see Dustin Poirier being able to stand in front of him and take those shots and last the way he did against Dan Hooker and the way he did against Justin Gaethje. That's the one thing that keeps on kind of popping into my head when I think about the contest.
Chisanga, do you think there's any learnings we can take from that first fight all those years ago?
I mean, it's nearly 7 years ago, that fight, 7 years ago in September. And I mean, literally, I think we kind of, I don't want to say the birth of a superstar, but that was the beginning. That's when he announced himself as a real legitimate featherweight title contender. And like, I remember watching it, and then like I turned to one of my good friends and I was just like, okay, this guy, he can back it up, because Poirier was the benchmark, and indeed he still is the benchmark in the division now. But in terms of what we can glean from that fight 7 years ago, well, nearly 7 years ago, I don't think you can anymore, because they're both developed so much since then. In particular, Poirier, I mean, Pete touched on it, like the move up to 155 pounds was so beneficial for him. And he had a setback against Michael Johnson, but I still don't think he'd really filled out to a 155 pound frame. And that, obviously, the loss to Khabib, he's only lost, but yeah, so he's won 10 of his last 13 fights now, a completely different fighter. And as Pete said, he's completely more durable. Mike Brown and Daya Ali Davis have really transformed him into, as Pete said, a fighter who likes to trade inside the pocket and is durable and can go to war. But as Pete said again, I don't think that's a good idea against Conor. I mean, I don't know if you're going to ask us straight up for a prediction and our breakdown of it, so I won't say it right now. But I think he can't stand and trade with Conor. That would be. I don't want to say suicide, because that's a bit of a harsh word, but it'll be. It's not, the night won't last very long if he does that.
So I was gonna say to Chisanga, like, the big thing that was made of the first fight, and I was there for it in Vegas, was when Poirier walked out to the weigh-in. He couldn't believe the amount of Irish people there, and a lot's been made of this in the lead up to it. Like, he seemed completely overwhelmed when he was faced with this rabid fan base, because Conor had put himself out as the kind of Captain Ireland when he bet Diego Brandao. Like, he was like, it looked like to the watching world that this guy was the savior of the nation when he put Diego Brandao away in Dublin. And it was only a few short months later that he was in the US for that press conference with Poirier, and you could already see it. For me, as you said, Chisanga, it was a moment for me that kind of showed him going from an Irish commodity to an international commodity. He became a global quantity ahead of this Poirier fight. But the big thing is being made of Poirier. He got into Poirier's head, all this kind of stuff. The one thing I'll say for Poirier is he's been in huge fights since then.
Yeah.
He's fought Khabib in Abu Dhabi. He's fought Justin Gaethje. He's fought Max Holloway and won for the interim lightweight title. I do think that will certainly stand to him. But in this situation, with only 2,000 people there, it's not really going to be like the classic McGregor fight, is it, Chisanga? Like, it's not going to have the same electricity in the room that can sometimes affect his opponents. Do you think that could stand to him at all?
I think that could benefit him, as you say. Like, obviously, every McGregor fight, there's just a sea of Irish flags and a sea of your fellow countrymen enjoying the amber nectar, which I wish I could be doing on the same night. But obviously, you have to be working. So yeah, I think that's going to work in his favor. And as you said, as we alluded to before, the possibility that the fans might boo Conor. I mean, that could very well work in Dustin's favor. But in terms of the atmosphere at the arena, I'm not quite sure of like the official number of how many people were there for the Holloway fight. They said 2,000, but I don't know if that's the case. But the acoustics of the arena are very, very good. Like at times, it felt like there was like maybe 4,000 fans in there. Like the acoustics are that good. So, I mean, there will be a bit of electricity. I think everybody's hearts will be racing because it's a Conor fight and what have you. But it won't be the same as last January or whatever. But that's obviously just the world we live in right now.
Let's talk about Conor to start with. And, there are some reports out of the McGregor camp that his hands are sharper than ever. Pete, I mean, is that just classic, pre-fight talk, or is there reason to believe that could be the case?
Listen, I didn't believe a word out of that camp for the last 2 years, to be honest, but I actually genuinely believe this. I saw a big leaf being turned ahead of the Cerrone fight, a focused Conor. I was talking yesterday about this. It actually reminds me of the Conor from 2011 and 2012, just before he got to the UFC. He was nearly like an Irish Bruce Lee, you know what I mean? Like, he was talking all this craziness about martial arts, obviously a few swear words thrown in the mix for color, but he was the way he was speaking about things, it felt like he was this amazing combat mind, and he's gone back to that now again. And in a similar vein, back then he used to get all these crazy martial artists in, like Taekwondo coaches, to work on his spinning kicks. I feel like the addition of Phil Sutcliffe, the boxing coach, is his version of that these days. And it's funny that he did it after the Mayweather fight. Like, I mean, he goes through a whole boxing camp. He goes through a whole boxing camp without a coach, and then he gets this guy in ahead of the Cerrone fight, and he started circulating boxers through the camp, like 15-1. Dylan Moran's been in the camp. 11-time national champion William Hayden's been in the camp. Like, these guys are no slouches, and Conor's putting in work with them all the time. And on top of Phil, he has Brad Brady there, and a power pad man as well. Like, this is very intricate stuff. You usually don't see it in MMA camps. Like, there's a pad man, there's a precision pad man, and there's a power pad man. So it's very, very focused training on his boxing. A lot of people think that's because he is in pursuit of that fight with Manny Pacquiao. But in fairness, it should suit this fight because you don't see Dustin go to the ground an awful lot either. Yeah. I genuinely believe it's true. Like, Owen Roddy has told me off the record about this a long time before I got him to commit it to record. So usually you don't have people volunteering that kind of information unless it's true. So I genuinely believe that, and it's a scary proposition considering what he's done already in his career, but I do believe that there is something to it, that I think his hands have sharpened.
Yeah, I spoke to John as well last week. We had to do an impromptu interview in actually the dressing room of the Etihad because I couldn't get Wi-Fi anywhere else. But yeah, even John was saying the fact that Conor, he seems to be a bit more muscle bound as well, and he's saying that he's hitting harder than usual. And granted, that has been the pre-fight amble for a lot of fights as well. But as you said, with the addition of Phil Sutcliffe and the other coaches, I tend to believe it, and I think that we're probably going to see a slicker and more methodical Conor in this fight with his hands.
I mean, you say slicker and more methodical. We mentioned the fight back in 2014 again. We know how Conor likes to fight. Looking at the odds again, the method of victory, I mean, Conor McGregor by knockout, technical knockout or disqualification is 4-7 favourite. The fight to be stopped in round 1 is the 2-1 favourite as well in the round betting. So the most likely round it's going to be stopped in is round 1 again. Do you think that's fair? Can we expect to see, the same mentality and the same tactics from McGregor in this fight?
I don't know. See, I think psychologically, as John Kavanagh is said before, that Poirier won't necessarily be able to get that loss out of his mind. And I think, although I believe he has to close the distance and try and make this a dogfight and tire out McGregor, I think that he'll be wary of doing that so early in the fight when Conor is at his freshest and when his fast twitch muscle fibers haven't been sapped whatsoever. So yeah, I'm not going to give my prediction because you're going to ask me flat out, but you'll ask me outright in a couple moments. But I see it going longer than 1 round, definitely.
Yeah, I'd be blown away. I'd be blown away. Like, I mean, that would be so impressive if McGregor goes in there and does that to Poirier, puts him away. When these guys like Max Holloway, who we saw put on an absolute masterclass last weekend, like Justin Gaethje, these guys are hard-hitting guys, man, and it took them a lot longer than 1 round. They didn't even get rid of him. He won those fights, but I'm saying if Conor goes in and does that, I mean, the calls for Khabib rematch, it's going to go off the charts. I think he predicted that it's going to take 60 seconds, and believe it or not, he is a quite confident lad. Ever since years ago,
I never would have guessed that.
I think it's I think a lot of people will be putting money on that because Conor has predicted it. So many outcomes of his fights, but again, I may have a different thing in mind, but I won't say it just yet. Because we're keeping up.
Yeah, we'll get to the end. I mean, there are going to be a few people listening to this podcast and watching this video who basically tune in when Conor's fighting, and that's their interest in the sport only, and maybe won't know too much about Dustin Poirier. So let's talk about him here. I mean, his record in recent fights is obviously absolutely superb. He lost to Khabib a couple of fights ago, but beyond that has won a fair few on the trot. I mean, what can we expect different from him? How do we expect him to anticipate the fight? He's obviously a lot bigger than he was 7 years ago.
Yeah, PT, I'll let you take that one first.
Okay. He's an incredible, this guy, ever since he came into the UFC, was considered this guy's going to be a champion. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's nearly disrespectful to people cast their minds back to the last fight and go, oh, it's a different Poirier. The Poirier back then was legit. The Poirier then, if he had beat Conor, he would have fought Aldo for the title. There's no doubt about it. He was a great fighter. It's just he wasn't as durable as the 155 version of Poirier. On top of the durability that we've seen, his punching, his striking is just phenomenal now. He's so slick. I don't think the Hooker fight is the best advertisement for how slick he can be. He'd been out for a bit before that fight, but if they go back and watch the Holloway fight, for example, that's an absolute clinic he put on against one of the best strikers in the UFC. I think the one thing people will hold against him, and obviously they saw it with the first Conor fight, is the fact that he has been downed. He has been knocked out. Chisanga mentioned earlier Michael Johnson. Obviously Conor has beaten him in the past like that too. This is combat sports, and the more you get knocked out, the more it becomes a thing that can happen. The probability becomes higher every time it happens to you. But he is certainly top of the food chain at 155. Without Khabib in the picture, I wouldn't argue with anyone that put, him number 1, number 2 in the division. So he's an absolute killer. He is a big threat. If McGregor wasn't in the division, I could see him beating all of these other guys there. I wouldn't argue with anyone that would pick him against him. So I think he's a very, very good fight, a very, very competitive fight. And for that reason, I think it's a far bigger test than, say, Donald Cerrone, who he absolutely destroyed in 40 seconds in January last year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And on the Cerrone fight, I mean, yeah, Cerrone beat himself that night in the octagon. As soon as Conor's music came on, his demeanor just changed and everything. But going back to Poirier, I mean, Poirier just, since that fight, he's just come on leaps and bounds. He's won, I think, 10 of his last 13 fights. Obviously went on to claim the interim lightweight title with a clinic against Max Holloway. And as Peter said, the narrative that he wasn't legit when he fought Conor is, I don't know who's perpetuating that narrative, because he was. And because he was a standout in the WEC. and now defunct promotion. Well, yeah, it is defunct because obviously the UFC bought them many a moon ago. And even when he was in the WEC, people were saying this guy has the skills to go on and be a world champion. And I still firmly believe that he has the skills to be a world champion. And, well, look at the champions who he's beaten. He's beaten Eddie Alvarez. He's beaten Justin Gaethje. He's beaten Max Holloway. And he's beaten Anthony Pettis, three of whom held gold in the UFC. So that just shows you how much he's improved since the Conor fight. And obviously since the Michael Johnson fight, which was kind of like a flash knockout, really. Like Michael Johnson, kind of hit and miss for those of you guys that don't really know it. I'd say he's what you call like a plus 500 fighter. He wins one, he loses one, wins one, loses one. But those people who are sleeping on Poirier, like, do so at your own peril, because I really do think that he's going to give Conor a really rough night.
Let's talk now then about kind of how McGregor got here. And of course, last time we saw him was against Donald Cerrone. The fight only lasted 40 seconds. This was pretty much expected. So kind of, Pete, why did that fight really even happen? And was it pretty necessary to get to where we are now?
Yeah, I think the Cerrone fight, it wasn't important in terms of the opponent. Like, I don't think anybody who knows the sport really gave Donald Cerrone much of a chance against Conor McGregor when they were matched. But it was very important in the sense that it got him working again. It got him back into a camp. It got him motivated. And it proved that he could get himself back into pristine condition and that he still had that signature stopping power, because the version we saw of Conor against Khabib was a shadow of the guy that we knew. He didn't even look physically very well. And look, I know I'm one to talk, but I mean, for Conor McGregor, he usually looks like a superhero, and he didn't really look that great at all against Khabib. Even the way he carried on ahead of the fight, like, usually there's just an intelligence to what he's saying and things like that. But before the Khabib fight, it was like, it just was so evil. It was really dark, and it was just really sinister. Everything about that for me was just everything that Conor shouldn't be. That was what was going on in that camp, unfortunately. But the Cerrone camp allowed him to get back and allowed him to really focus his energy on training camp again. And I think once he got that positive result, once he got that positive outcome, he knew he'd be able to press on ahead and take on bigger challenges. And that's what we have now in Dustin Poirier. Yeah,
I agree with you, PT, in terms of getting Conor back on track, because he immediately started campaigning. He was like, yeah, I want to headline 248 in March. And yeah, I want to come back. I want to have the season, to quote him. That's what you're saying. But obviously that didn't come to fruition through no fault of his own. But what was refreshing to see was that he just kept on training. Like, he kept updating everybody, showing that, look, I'm still active. I still want to fight. And I think that's obviously what led to him being so frustrated that he leaked the DMs with Dana White, like on Twitter. So yeah, Cowboy, like, I don't want to necessarily say it was a layup, because that's disrespectful to like a legend of the sport that Donald is. But I don't think anybody foresaw the possibility, unless Donald got like an Imanari roll or something, or a heel hook, that he was going to win that fight. So yeah, it kind of had to happen to get Conor back on track and for bigger and better things. But the real hard work starts now, and starts on Saturday.
And the thing is, the thing that, like, I know Conor has had massive controversies, continues to have controversies outside the cage. But as far as the MMA fan base are concerned, they just want to see him fight. The vast majority of people, they just want to see him fight. And their biggest complaint about Conor from 2017 to 2019, like, he didn't fight enough. He wasn't fighting in MMA. So that camp, that Donald Cerrone fight, it allowed him to fight. It allowed him to look good again. And there was, as Chisanga said, there was that promise of him gonna fight a lot more. And obviously COVID ruined that. But I think once he competes and once he shows an appetite to compete, that really gets him back on good terms with the MMA fan base, the broader sense anyway. A lot more people will be willing to listen to him. A lot more people will be getting behind him if he is competing and he is active.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You've said there that, after the Cerrone fight, we can see Conor back to some kind of strength. But if you're in the Poirier camp, where are you looking to exploit some weaknesses? I mean, what are you going to this fight? Where are you thinking this is where we can win that fight?
Well, for me, I think Poirier, he's got to close the distance, but he's got to do it in a range in a way where he just doesn't walk straight into Conor's range. I mean, look at what happened to Jose Aldo and even Eddie Alvarez to a certain extent, although that wasn't anywhere near as emphatic as Aldo's attempt to close the distance. He's got to close the distance and press Conor up against a cage and make him work for dominant position and get him tired. That's what I think. That's where his route to victory lies. And although I'm sure he'd love to get it back, to get the victory back, to level the series with the stunning knockout, I don't foresee that Mike Brown and everybody at American Top Team would have told him to engage him in a striking battle. I think the strikes that we'll see from Poirier will be to try initiate some sort of clinch. If they won't be, well, I don't want to say fully committed strikes, but I think, yeah, that will be it. That he'll try to engage from the clinch from the strikes, and there'll be more setups than hard punishing shots. But then again, he could just be overwhelmed by the sense that, oh, I have the chance to get this guy back. Let me just swing everything at him. And I mean, so many fighters go in there with different game plans for Conor. Like Eddie Alvarez, everybody thought that Eddie Alvarez was going to be the stiffest test because of his wrestling credentials. But Eddie, I think, attempted one takedown, and that was, well, I'm a big fan of Eddie Alvarez. He's the OG of the fight game, but it was a lazy attempt of a takedown. So I just hope Dustin Poirier doesn't fall into that similar trap.
It's funny, like a lot of people are talking about grappling and stuff like this. We rarely see Dustin Poirier grappling. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, he's great at catching submissions. If the fight does somehow end up on the ground for whatever reason, he's great at catching submissions. He has a lovely guillotine. We've seen his triangle. We've seen his work from the guard position back in the day in the UFC in his early days and in the WEC as well. But I don't think his takedowns are brilliant. I think the only time I've been really like, wow, look at this guy's wrestling was against Joseph Duffy all those years ago when he absolutely put on a wrestling clinic, man. He put on a clinic. Us poor Irish lads just can't wrestle for beans. But it's the thing about Conor is he can't. Like, he's a good counter wrestler. We saw it in that first round against Khabib. And look, Conors can't put a lot of merit in that. Like, look how long he stopped him for before Khabib dominated the round. But when you measure it against the likes of Gaethje, who's a Division 1A wrestler, and Poirier as well, who fought Khabib, like, I mean, Conor did better than them at trying to stop that onslaught for that first exchange anyway. So I do feel like Dustin Poirier, if he's trying to grapple, it's going to be a tough night, because I don't rate his takedowns all that much, but I do feel like if he gets the fight to the ground, Conor's going to have to be very wary of those submission skills, because he has plenty of them.
Looking at the method of victory odds again for Poirier, you've got knockout is 6-1, decision or technical decision is 7-1, and then submission is 12-1. Would you agree that the knockout would be the most likely method of victory if he is to win?
No, I think I'd back the other two before I back the knockout, to be honest, and they're better odds. So
there you go.
I'm in agreement with Pete. I mean, Poirier does have stopping power. We've seen that before, but Conor's got a durable chin, although some people will say that, oh yeah, he got rocked by Nate Diaz, but as gangly as Nate Diaz is, he has deceptive punching power as well himself. So, but if it's for me, I'd choose the decision 100%.
Interesting.
Like,
for the decision,
I could see it like in terms of the knockout. The only way I see that happening is Conor completely gasses himself out trying to put Poirier away over the 2 rounds. Like, he needs to be completely exhausted though, and then Poirier hits a rhythm, because he's great at putting a pace on lads. Like, it would be an accumulation of damage or just completely overwhelming him stamina wise that would lead to a TKO finish for me from Poirier. But again, I don't think Conor's cardio is as bad as people think it is. You know, look, he looked bad in the 4th round against Khabib. But Khabib had Justin Gaethje, a guy who's never been criticized for his cardio. He had him completely gassed after 1 round in there with him. So it's a different kind of guy. Again, Nate Diaz, one of the most famous engines in all of MMA, and he went 5 rounds with him after that the first fight. So I don't know. I think it's a very hard task for Dustin to finish this by TKO or KO, I believe. But I do think decision, probably what Chisanga is saying, is one of the more likely ways of Dustin getting the job done.
We're going to get into the predictions now, and Chisanga, I know I've cut you short a couple of times, and even nearly. So I'll come to you first, but let's have like an over. You know, how do you expect, beyond just what you think is going to happen, how do you expect the fight to play out tactically, and who do you think is going to end up winning, and by which method?
as I said earlier, I think Poirier will be a bit hesitant to begin with, so much so that I don't foresee the fight ending in 60 seconds unless Conor goes hell for leather. But I think he's learned not to do that. Like as PT said, he talked about the Nate Diaz fight, the first Nate Diaz fight. He gassed himself out in those 2 rounds trying to take him out, and then obviously subsequently was finished. So I see Poirier being a bit tentative, and I think also what a lot of people don't do. I think Poirier is going to utilize leg kicks to Conor, because Conor leads very heavy on his lead leg, and I think if he does that, if he chips away at the tree, metaphorical tree that is Conor, eventually he'll fall in terms of his explosiveness, and that he'll be a bit more flat-footed, and he'll be there for the taking. But that being said, I'm not looking past Conor in this one. I think he's more motivated than we've ever seen him. And as John Kavanagh said, psychologically, a devastating loss like that is hard to erase. I mean, Michael Bisping did it against Dan Henderson a long time ago at UFC 204, which we talked about there, PC. But I just foresee Conor getting it done, and I think the method of victory will be a 3rd round stoppage. I'm going on record saying Conor will get it done in the 3rd round.
McGregor in round 3 is 10-1. Pete, your turn now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like one of the things that Dustin didn't know about Conor in that first fight is how intelligent of a striker he is. Conor's left hand is so powerful that a lot of people just pay attention to that and don't realize they're falling straight into his trap. What he did with Poirier in the first fight, he was throwing all these spectacular kicks, but all he was trying to do is get him to move to the left to set up his left hand. And then as soon as he started falling into that pattern, it was lights out. So Poirier's going to have to be, he has to know, like, this is an intelligent guy. Mike Brown's one of the best coaches in the world. They're going to be so wary of not falling into his trap, not hitting the kind of rhythm that Conor wants them to hit. They're going to be constantly trying to off-pace Conor, break up his rhythm. And you know what, Chisanga? I'm nearly bulling that you went first, because that is also my prediction. Is Conor McGregor.
I swear we have not colluded. We've not colluded before this.
That is ideal. We've got one tip for everybody listening. The two panelists both going for McGregor round 3, 10-1. I mean,
that's good odds as well. That is good odds.
I'm going to go for it. Yeah, I'm going to.
Same, yeah.
Well, especially when you think round 1's 2-1, and you got round 3 at 10-1.
Yeah, I'll start gambling my wedding money. Then I'll have to explain.
We're going to have so much more, darling. We're going to have so much more.
So you're both tipping McGregor to win this one, which is good, because our sponsor Parimatch have a special offer for the fight. 6-1 on Conor McGregor to beat Dustin Poirier. The current odds, as I mentioned, are 4-11. So you're getting 6-1, about a 4-11 shot. £5 maximum stake. Winnings are paid in free bets. 18 plus only. Be gamble aware, and T's and C's do apply. But sign up for a Parimatch account in the link in the YouTube description to claim that offer. A $5 on Conor McGregor at 6-1. Not much to complain about there. So get on that. And now we're going to talk about a bit of what happens next. And I guess the question that we have to ask is, if you are both right, if Conor McGregor ends it in round 3, and you guys are a little bit richer, and hopefully a few of our listeners and viewers are too, can we then expect Khabib McGregor too to come off the back of it?
I think the fan base themselves, if McGregor does look impressive, if McGregor can put Poirier away, I think the fan base themselves will make so much noise for that fight. I don't think Khabib's the kind of guy to show up, have all these meetings, tease it a few times, all this kind of stuff without actually thinking about doing it. But one thing I will say for Khabib is, right, there's a lot of reasons to do this fight. There's a lot of money to be made for Khabib. It's he's fighting the biggest star in the sport. They're both the biggest stars in the sport. The UFC will make a lot of money. It'll probably break pay-per-view records. But in terms of Khabib's legacy, I don't think that adds to it. He's already beaten McGregor soundly. That's the one thing I'd say that will go against Khabib signing on the dotted line. He's already beaten him soundly, but I do feel like this is a different Conor. Conor was all over the place when he fought Khabib. Like, it was... I picked against him in the fight. I picked a submission by Khabib. I had no confidence in him whatsoever. And I can safely say that this is a different beast. But will that be enough to sway Khabib? Only the performance on Saturday night will do that. So I do expect it to happen, to be honest. I don't think there can be this much smoke without fire. I don't know how you feel about it, Chisanga.
No, I think the UFC will go hell for leather to if Conor wins to well, he has to win in spectacular fashion. Those are Habib's own words. But I think the UFC will go for broke and offer him. Well, I don't even think money. I think how they'll try and entice him. You know, he has all these charities and he's very philanthropic. I think they'll appeal to his charitable side and like, okay, we might make like a £50 million donation to whatever charity. Because do you remember, like, I think a few days after UFC 229, he went to Africa and was building water wells.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
I think that's how they'll try getting back. But in terms of the matchup itself, I mean, as you say, Conor was not himself in the first fight, and he wasn't himself. That's the best way to put it, without being very, very crude and very, very, very harsh. But I actually think that Habib would be interested in coming back purely for the fact that he can silence those people that are saying, "Oh, well, you didn't fight the best Conor and whatever," because obviously this Conor that we've seen over the last 12, 13 months, he's motivated. He's back. He's the best that he's ever been, best shape he's ever been in. So I think that would motivate Habib to be like, you know what? Let me just do it one more time. Shut him up, 30-0, undisputed UFC lightweight champion, once for all, right off into the sunset, and that would be it.
Another thing about what Habib is doing, the fact that he said, "Oh, I'm going to have to wait and see. These guys have to be spectacular." It's kind of like Big Brother and Conor. And Conor did this to Habib in 2016 after he bet Alvarez. Everybody felt as though Habib was the number one contender in the division. And Conor was like, "Oh, this guy pulls out too many fights. I'd never sign on the dotted line to fight a guy who pulls out as much as this guy." And then he went on to fight Mayweather and subsequently derailed his career for a few years. But I think it's that Habib is using this opportunity to be like, "Look, I'm the cheese now. You're not. I'm the champ. I make the calls here. You don't." So I feel like that was a big part of that message coming out from Dana as well. You have to impress Habib for him to even entertain the idea of fighting him. I feel like that's a big champ move.
I mean, the fight might not even be happening, but oddschecker there are prices up on the site. Habib is the 2-7 favourite, Conor 5-2. So you can see there's still an expectancy that if the fight does happen, Habib would come out on top. What about Pacquiao? I mean, that's the other question to ask. What about a fight with Manny?
I'm going to get upset with you now, George, if you keep... Like, I can't tell you, man. If that broke my heart when he fought Mayweather. Before Conor got to the UFC, he fought at 155 a good few times around Ireland, and I was there for a lot of them, and he was just sparking lads out in seconds. And then for the Cage Warriors title, his last fight before the UFC, Ivan Butchinger, a really respected Russian grappler, he butchered him, left hand knockout, one of the most beautiful left hand knockouts you'll see in the sport. And then he gets signed to the UFC, and they say, "We want you to fight at featherweight." So he had to drop back down again. And all the while he's at featherweight, even when the run is amazing, he's beating Aldo. I'm like, man, wait till you see this guy at 55. He packs even more power. He goes in against Alvarez, puts on the performance of a lifetime, and I'm going, well, there it is. I told you. This is going to be magic. And then he just ruins his MMA run. Yeah. It was gone. Because of Floyd Mayweather, because of the money he made, there was no hunger. He hadn't wrestled in a year by the time he fought Habib at the point when he came back. It really messed him up. Like, I feel like, honestly, Conor's legacy could be so much stronger if he didn't go away and fight Mayweather. Look, he's a lot wealthier for it. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. His brand is way bigger. But I'd be so disappointed if he did this with Manny Pacquiao, because it's going to derail him again. Like, I was speaking to UFC welterweight Danny Roberts about this only yesterday, and he was like, it's nearly impossible to juggle two sports like that. So I'd be really against that in terms of, I want to see Conor now. I want to see the best guy. I want to see him put his best foot forward every time. I want to see him keeping a clean nose, not making a fool of himself outside the octagon. So I don't like that Manny Pacquiao fight at all. But the fact that Manny has signed for Paradigm, McGregor's management company, it's not looking good for me. I'll tell you that.
Is it more likely to happen, Chisanga, if he loses? Because then there's almost, if he loses on Saturday, just another payday, get himself another $1 million watch.
Oh, you see those little rascal watches he posted on Instagram the other day? Christ. Worth more than 10 times more than people's houses and stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, in terms of the Pacquiao matchup, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Like, we saw what happened with Floyd, and let's call a spade a spade. Floyd took it easy on him for the first probably 6 rounds or so, until he broke out the Philly shell guard and he started just walking Conor down like that, which we haven't seen Floyd do since he was Pretty Boy Floyd. So that just shows you how confident he was and how he essentially carried the fight. But in terms of the Pacquiao matchup, it's a walk in the park for Manny, a walk in the park. But I don't want this walk in the park to come to fruition. But as PT said, they're both managed by the same company, Paradigm, now. So, I mean, it's pointing towards that, but I want to see the run that we should have seen after he beat Eddie Alvarez in 2016. And one could even argue that if he had gone on the run and if he'd wiped out the contenders after beating Eddie, the Floyd fight would have still been there. I mean, Floyd in a couple of weeks is fighting Logan Paul in Japan. So
who's going to win that one?
Logan's got a chance, bro. Logan's got a chance. Let's. He's bigger than him if he connects, bro. He's got Logan. Basically, no, I don't want to see it. I want Conor to stay focused on mixed martial arts and fulfilling the season that unfortunately COVID deprived us of last year.
And before we let you go, let's just quickly talk about what happens next if Poirier wins this. I mean, is he a big enough draw to get Khabib to come and fight? Who do we see him coming up against next if he manages to beat Conor on Saturday?
Could be even bigger, you know. He could end up fighting someone like Jake Paul.
I
don't know. Like, I don't feel like Khabib will want to fight Poirier again, even if he goes in and Aryukan's Conor to death, like in the first round. I just don't think he's gonna want to do that again because he probably bet Poirier more soundly than he bet Conor, even though Poirier landed one beautiful punch on him. That's probably the hardest he's been hit. But I feel like if it's Poirier, he's probably going to take a closer look at that co-main event between Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler. But I also I don't believe Dana White when he says that the GSP thing's off the table. I don't believe it for a second. So I think that could be a possibility. Maybe that's still the biggest possibility because that seems to be who Khabib wants to fight the most.
I think in terms of Poirier, like PT, I think you're forgetting that if Poirier is to win, they're just going to run that fight back with Conor again, 100%, because that'll be the money fight, another money fight for them. But then obviously that will close the door on Khabib returning for either of those guys. So yeah, that's what will be next for Poirier if he gets the job done, unless he decides, you know what. In fact, no, he has no choice in the matter. Let's not be around the bush. Like when Conor lost to Nate, he went straight to Lorenzo and Dana that night, and he's like, "I want the rematch. Like this is going to happen next." And then lo and behold, it came together. So I think, yeah, obviously you get McGregor Poirier 3, and then obviously that's a sellable fight for the promotion. Like, well, at least a million pay-per-view buys, and yeah, that would be it. So Poirier McGregor 3.
Nate Diaz would be so nice to happen.
Is he not?
Nate Diaz waiting for that trilogy fight.
I know. But Dana keeps saying that he's got something in the pipeline for him. So, but I think I have a sneaking suspicion that's going to be Justin Gaethje.
Wow, that'd be fantastic.
Not a good fight for him though, because I think that's the fight his chin will go in.
Sounds like another podcast in a few months then. But
yeah.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot for taking the time to speak to us today, Peter Carroll and Chisanga Malata. Thanks for listening and watching the Oddschecker betting show. Don't forget that Parimatch have a special offer for this fight, 6-1 on Conor McGregor to beat Dustin Poirier. All the details can be found below in the YouTube description box. Don't forget to subscribe to the video, to our YouTube channel, and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to our podcast channel as well. Do enjoy the fight, whether it's Saturday night or Sunday morning for you, and please do gamble responsibly.